All right, it's 7 o'clock.
That's okay.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order. This is the November 28th, 2022 Committee of the Whole Meeting of the Milford Board of Education. If we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Ms. Griffin, can we have a roll call, please?
Catherine Ailing. Here. Adam DeYoung.
Mr. DeYoung is excused.
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Andrew Fowler.
Here.
Tracy Irby.
Here.
Emily McDonough Souza.
Here.
Gary Pellicetti.
Here.
Luna Petrosky.
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glennon.
Here.
9 members present.
Thank you. Dr. Gutai, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, members of the board. So good to be with you this evening. We have one of the annual favorite presentations before you this evening. And I think I was promised only about 500 slides this time. Was that the number?
No,
Yes.
I cut it back.
More seriously though, we are so incredibly grateful that this Board of Education, our elected officials, individuals who serve our community, support the maintenance of our facilities and grounds. That means a lot when we have our young people and staff members walking into well-maintained, clean, quality, healthy buildings. And it speaks volumes. I was at the law foreign game at Thanksgiving, and someone came up and said, you know, the way you guys take care of these fields, it's just incredible. You don't always go to school districts and see fields maintained so well. And I hope that you also know that we do the same with our buildings and facilities. So this is a great way for us to highlight what you are supporting through the budget process and what the community supports. So I'll turn things over to Mr. Bradbury so we can shine on all the work that has been done for our students and staff.
Well, thank you very much. This is really a great, we've been doing this for several years, just putting a few pictures together of what we try and get done during the summer. We break it down by the schools, and it's really an overview of all different monies, city money, our money. So we'll just run through these projects and let you know. So we're going to start off at Calf Pen Meadow, and you have the list in front of you. It should be pretty close to the order that we have. But this was the existing playscape at Calf Pen Meadow. It's over 20 years old, and we ended up replacing it this summer. This is part of the process. We have to demo the whole structure, then level the site. And then we have a contractor come in and starts installing a new one. And this is what's up there now. So it's a neat structure that we have over there. We have some musical instruments in there that the kids can play on. We also have the handicap ramp to get the kids up to the main play activity of the whole structure. And they also have a new climbing rock. The kids can climb on top, go underneath. And we're getting ready to add, there's a bench there. We have 2 more benches that are going in, I think this week. This is part of the musical component. Handicap ramp. This is another project at Calf Pen Meadow. It was an old existing vinyl fence that we put in there, and we also had a water issue. They put this house up after, recently. We were there first, but we had some water runoff that was running down the backside. This is just the backside of the fence. And then this is the drainage we put in to help control that to the back of the wetlands. Just showing some of the drainage underneath. And this is the continuous curb we put in. This catches everything and gets it to the back of the property. And then we install a black wire fence with a retaining wall that runs down the whole length of the property. That again catches the swale off the back to the back property. This is the front hardening project. We're doing 2 this summer, and then we'll have the last final one will be pumpkin. This one is calf pen, and the other one is live oaks. This is the inside abatement. We had some asbestos removed inside. This is pretty much how it sits today, is right there. So we're waiting on glass and frames to come from the company. COVID has pushed everything back a tremendous amount of time. We're hoping that we'll see some activity with arrivals of glass and frames over the winter break, at least to get them on site. We also did the kitchen over at Calf Pen. This is the existing original kitchen floor, asbestos floor tile. We removed that. We put in some new vinyl floor tile. This is the old kitchen door. We ended up cutting this door out and going all the way to the ground, so now food service can roll their carts out and expedites lunch for them because they have such a short window. And this is what it looks like today. And they also had some artwork done at the front to dress up the whole serving line. Kennedy, we did a few things here. We had to replace the glass on the left and right of this door. It fogged up. It just looked terrible, so I changed that out. We redid the teacher's room over. This was a classroom that they turned into to give them more space there. Made those cabinets and solid surface counter. We removed a rug in one of the offices in the front of the building, just for new floor tile. And then this is also part of the artwork that they did over the kitchen serving line at Kennedy. Live Oaks, I only have a map here. We had to replace in the back wing of this building, this back section in here, we had to abate all the piping. We had rehang the water line. The hangers broke on that, and then we had to re-insulate all the steam and hot water, the recirc lines. We did that over the summer. They are also getting a hardening project, and they are in the same state. This was the framework going up. The ballards, so the cars can't get through the front. And then this is how it sits today. And again, we're waiting on glass and frames to come in for this. We also replaced the rooftop unit that heats and cools the main office. We did that in-house with our own people. Mathewson School. We did some work on the media center. This is the existing conditions that were there. These windows and this roof section, you see the worn out asphalt roof. We replaced the roofing and these operating windows above this section. We've been chasing water leaks on this section of the building since it went in, so I think I finally have it. And then that's the new section. Those are the new windows. And this is another section of roof. You just see the new PVC roofing up into the new, rolls up into the new glass. We had to replace the storm line in the back. This is common. We'll find sinkholes and whatnot in the property, so we have to go find the leak, remove the asphalt, and find the pipe. Our constant, these are the mini blinds that we have in all the schools, and this is what happens to them. So we replace these with these roller shades. Really cleans it up. These are darkening, helps darken the room, and so they can show the smart boards. It helps with those. Meadow side. We ended up getting some new bulletin boards for the hallways. We got those installed. These are a couple of them that are out through the school. We ended up having to add some ventilation to the back wing, so we put on some new rooftop exhaust fans, which then ties into the inside. We had to install these grills, which are now, they have a fire damper on them, which gets wired back to the fire panel. And we also replaced the rooftop unit on the main office at Meadowside also. Orange Avenue. This was the old playscape that we did there. Again, very old. They had the old ramps in back then, where they were asphalt ramps that we're trying to get rid of. This is the demolition. And then we have to regrade the whole site, so which means pulling out all the old 5-bar that's in there. There's about 12 inches of 5-bar that we have to move around and get down to the substrate, and then we start installing the new playscape. We installed a little sidewalk to get them out closer to it. And this is pretty much as it sits today. Again, lots of features on these. There's some drums, all those little flowers are drums, they can bang on those. They have a xylophone there, and Joe Apicella's son did help me with the design on this. He was crucial in telling me, we did okay. We added some air conditioning to D1 and D3. We got some unit ventilators in there. I put those in a couple years ago, and I added the coils in, so we were able to get the money for these 2 rooms, which is just, you see those curves there. We end up having to cut the roof. It's a seismic curve that goes in to hold the unit down to the roof, and then the penetrations through the new roof. Orchard Hills, another playscape went on here. We are moving the existing playscape, which is out in the front because we have a project going on out there, and we're putting this playscape in the back of the building. There's a pre-K set up here now, and we integrated the 2 playgrounds together. We had a large grade change back here, which we had to adjust for. It has a canopy, a little sun structure on the top, xylophone, and that's how we tied the 2 playscapes together. We have a border that goes around so they can get to both of them. I don't have any, as far as the parking lot goes, it's getting to go back out to bid probably January. We'll get that out on the street, and then we'll do that over the summer. Pumpkin is getting ready to have a large renovation going on there. I have some pictures just to show you the footprint, but we're really just breaking ground. We ran into ledge, so we're getting ready to remove some ledge this week. I think there's sparks starting tomorrow. So this is on the top of the roof looking down at the courtyard. What you're seeing right here is this will all be enclosed. On the left side of that picture is where the science room will be going. And then as we pan across, you can see them starting to put the footings and foundations in. But that second trench you see there that's where we're starting to hit the ledge. And then as we go out, it kind of, as you climb up to the parking area, there's a large amount of ledge up there too that we're gonna have to remove. We also had to make some modifications to the parking lot to get kids in and out, because that whole side of the property is closed down. So I added an asphalt ramp in the front so we can get kids in and out there, deliveries. Down in the back, we added this asphalt walkway just to get kids and parents from the lower parking lot up where they didn't have to go out into the road. And then I removed the grass strip where that new asphalt is. We removed that because parents are dropping off there. And now we can at least clean it. We can take the snow out of there, and they won't be walking in the mud or tripping over the curb. Another ramp we put in by that door 13. East Shore, a couple of little projects here. We ended up pulling the floor in the cafeteria. It was just worn out, starting to crack a little bit, so we pulled that and installed the same VCT floor back in there. This is a science room that we removed this from the center of the room. It has a sink in it. You think it'd be a simple project, but it ends up, there's a big pit under this where we had to do an asbestos abatement under here to get the pipes back to the tunnel and cap everything off. And then we just finished the floor and left an access plate for that if they want to add it again. Harborside, several projects there. Most of it was up on the top of the media center. We had some money to replace the units that are up there that serve the media center, the cafeteria, and the computer lab. So we have those replaced. While we were up there, we also had to do the roof. So we replaced the roof up there, and we had to move a curb, and that's this picture here where that big pile is. That's as it sits today. We had to move this curb about a foot because there wasn't enough room to actually put all the equipment back up there, but we are waiting for equipment. So we should have that probably January, And that's why we have this on the side of the building. I brought temporary heat in to heat the cafeteria. Everything's working on the upper media center and computer lab, but this unit had to be moved and we couldn't hook anything back up. So we should be back on track soon. We renovated the classroom, room 25. When we renovate a classroom, we usually take the full ceiling out, take the floor out, get all the asbestos out of there and do new ceiling and grid work. So that room ends up looking like this for a week or so. And then we put it back, new 2x2 ceiling, all LED lighting, and new vinyl floor. The academy, we had a small project here. We had you see all these pavers here, they all settled. The curb was a trip hazard, the loading ramp was a hazard, so I had to pull all the pavers up and install new pavers. We had some staff trip on this lip particular here, and this is as it goes back in. And this is how it looks today. We modified the sign, we changed that up to get the address on there, and so now it's Milford Public Schools out in front. We changed the boiler over and the hot water heater. It was original to the building, and we were having trouble getting parts for this particular boiler. So we ended up going with that's a new chimney that goes up through the roof, and that's the new boiler and hot water heater there. And we actually, we don't have a backup for the academy. So what I had them do is we have some taps that we put in, some valves. In other words, if that boiler went down, we can bring a rental in and just tie right into the two valves I have installed on the side of the boiler. Foreign High School. Foreign did get some updating with some athletic improvements, so we have quite a list to go through here. This is the media center, which is the learning center. This was before. This is that we removed the bookshelves so we can get the new carpeting in. This is the old carpeting. And this is the new carpeting. So this is as the new carpeting goes in. Whole space had to be fully emptied, books packed and stored. And then this is as it sits today. So we have all the stacks on the outside of the building with all new furniture. This is from the other end of the media. This is some closer spots, just some comfy seating. The kids are really gathering together and using the space. And then that's the new circulation desk that just was pushed off to the side. The track, we ended up replacing the track. We renovated the track, so we all new fencing, new surface. We had a mill and grade. We ended up installing this curb you'll see. I wanted to put this curb in there so if there any time that the track has to get replaced or the paving outside has to be replaced, there is now a line, and they won't have to do both at the same time anymore. So the fence is set in this. And this runs all around the track anywhere there's paving or anything that butts up to it. This is the start of the process. You'll see those piles on the track. They actually scrape the rubber off and load that into dumpsters, and then they come in with a milling machine that actually takes about 1.5 inches or 2 inches off the top of the asphalt so they can put the new asphalt down and recap it. This is the asphalt is down and they're protecting the fence from the overspray, from the red, because it gets kind of everywhere. New fence. And that's how they finish this off. So this is the base coat going down. That's pretty much how it is today. All the lines are done. We put this sliding gate in here. This gave them some more room for visitors in front of the station here, and then we can get equipment out onto the field if we have to. We actually had a 100-foot boom lift out there today for the lights. New scoreboard. Some new man gates in the front here. We brought the fencing out. The big gate is the lock for vehicle traffic, and we always have the pedestrians that can get in and out to use the track whenever they need. When we did the two, with turf areas over, we kind of lost our shot put area and our javelin area and discus area. So now we're creating new space. So we grabbed a piece of property in the back, not grabbed, it was there. We just had to do some clearing. You see everything on the left side here. This is where the shot put is going. We're gonna be throwing back to the baseball field. And in that process, we were able to get a path around the back of the baseball field. The woods has encroached so close to the field that, you know, we had tree limbs hanging over the baseball field, and we were getting a lot of leaves, and it was getting too close to the fence. You couldn't even walk around that before. This is the band entrance at Foreign High School. This has been in disrepair for a while, so we ended up pulling this and finishing that off at a new plaza, handicap accessibility. We ended up installing these banners they purchased. We did this with our lift. This is the gym floor. That patch you see there is from the flood we had last year. So to get the season in last year, we put this patch in. And then this year we had to take the floor right down to the raw material, right down to the base. And this is how it looks today. So we finished the floor. This was the old F, and you see the yellowing of the polyurethane, and this is the new F. It's just another view looking back to the key work with all the paint in there. They also got a new boiler for their domestic hot water. This is a larger project. We're redoing the heating for the pool. So it's a whole package. This was one piece, was the domestic hot water boiler. And we have a rooftop for the pool and a rooftop for the locker rooms. That should be in probably over the winter. We had to do some work to the chiller, to the cooling tower. We had to replace the motor and fan assembly on that. We installed a new playscape up in the early childhood development area up there. This was what it was. And we were able to get a regular playscape in there with 5R for them. Jonathan Law, we have some athletic improvements. They're gonna have their big push will be next summer. We're actually lining up the track to be done now. We've ordered the material for that, so we're getting going on that. So they'll have the same amount of athletic improvements to that track next year. But they did get some new scoreboards. BJ ordered those. This is for the baseball field. This is for the softball field. And then we hopefully are winding up our COVID-19 protocols. We did empty some trailers this summer. We had 55 trailers throughout the district that we ended up having to empty with the help of IT, sort out and figure out what we had. We're down to about 22 now. This is one trailer that came back in with kindergarten furniture. These are the desks that we had, the temporary desks that we had to pull back out of the classrooms because some got tables back in, so we have these. Constant shuffling of material. A lot of it comes into Parsons and goes back on a trailer back out to some of the schools because it gets separated here. And then our tents. Our tents are down for the winter now, and they're all getting stored. And they'll be ready to go up next year. And that's pretty much short show this year.
Questions, board members? Comments, Ms. Doyle?
I think everything looks great. I echo Dr. Kataya's statements. I've visited various schools and athletic pursuits of my nieces and nephews and see the difference, and especially in the schools that are in our DERG, if it's called that, and seeing the difference, it's noticeable. So, couple questions. I saw on the sheets that you sent out that you removed a bunch of trees that came out that were cut down.
Right.
So is there a replacement process for those? Or are you just cutting trees down? Because I'm assuming some of those trees that are dead are in like nicer spots than the fore and behind that where we don't want them encroaching.
A lot of the trees that we remove, I usually work with Steve Johnson at the city, and he'll come out and we'll assess the situation. We don't have the funds to prune trees. We only get to touch them when they're dead. And 9 times out of 10, they're dead. There was a couple large ones up at Foreign that were half dead that we have to remove. So that's usually what we're going after. We had a couple at Harborside. If they're on the property line and we think they're a danger, then we'll go after those. Those are the ones we'll schedule to get replaced. But it really, we don't have a replacement policy. We don't have anything. We do get a couple trees in. We planted some at East Shore last year. But mostly we're just fixing the liabilities.
I think Jerry Grant in the mayor's office has a ton of trees that he's been randomly, if you drive around the city, you see them
Yes.
randomly stuck in parks.
Right.
Then the next question is so I don't have the budget book in front of us. I know that we tend to pull money from extra accounts. I don't remember if there was any that moved over into this account from here, because we don't tend to fund it heavily. We tend to take the overage over, and how much is
Not for the last 2 years.
Okay. Okay,
That's
so,
our hopes this year, but.
Right.
COVID.
Yeah.
so the
expenditures.
700,000 is what we budgeted, and that's where we ended up. It's about there, I saw.
So, yeah, the strategy in that is just, and Pat knows, he comes to us with millions of dollars of requests, prioritizes them. We pretty much flat fund them every year. And then use whatever we can at the end of the year to get to some of the projects that don't make the cut. We'll use that same strategy this year going into next.
Okay. And then my last question is you've replaced a number of boilers and other equipment like that. How does that affect energy efficiency and that sort of thing?
We're always, every time we make a step, we're ever more energy efficient. The problem is where we're very cautious on, and we have a lot of opportunity with UI and grant and reimbursement. We have to be very cautious on that. Because sometimes just because it's very efficient, it will save thousands of dollars when it's running.
Mhm.
And you don't have to buy parts for it. The problem is, we're fixing those higher end, so that's the balance, that's what we're trying to do. So we try and stick with what works and where we can get parts. Because, but we are more energy efficient, we're rolling back all our run times from the COVID, from the pandemic. We had very long run times, we were running stuff through the night to turn air over, and now we can pull those back a little bit, so we'll save some energy there. Hopefully we'll do a little better this year than we did last year. So that's really where we're looking, controlling the temperatures and making sure we're not overshooting or undershooting, so.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? No. I wanted to ask, where do we stand with air conditioning at this point? So you mentioned replacing units, so those are small units that handle parts of each school?
So what we have is, we have a list, a master list of what we have equipment-wise, from rooftop units to split systems. So I have a list that we're always trying to get replaced. So now there's other money that Jim and I are working on to air condition more parts of the school through the state.
Okay.
But everything that gets put through my budget is usually replacement
Right.
or out of date.
Correct, right, okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Ms. McDonough Souza?
Thank you. In looking at the pandemic-related project, the cleaning out of the trailers, it says looking for warehouse space. Is that related to the Eels Hill? What's the status of that?
The Eels Hill is on the capital improvement plan that we presented to the
Oh,
mayor.
right.
So now we're waiting to see what projects get funded.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to guess, that's not gonna be one of them.
Yeah.
We do really have a need for storage space. And Pat said we have 20 trailers, and you know, those, they just keep coming. So the rental fees just keep coming. So we've been actively looking for warehouse space, and believe it or not, there is very little available space in Milford, Orange area. And we've been working with the bigger commercial real estate firms, but there just isn't. We've looked at a few buildings, and they're either too big, too small, or not available. So we continue to look.
Okay. And can you just remind me, what, are we talking about furniture, what type of stuff? Okay, first.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority right now is, things that
Desks.
came, desks and chairs that we used during COVID that are now, I mean, they're only 2 years old.
Yeah.
Or less, so we're not gonna throw them away,
Right,
but we don't have use for them.
We did make our case to the mayor,
okay,
and threw out a couple ideas, so
okay,
we know it's out there into the universe.
gotcha, okay, thank
Do
you.
we still have, space at the old Simon Lake School?
Yes, we do. The building is basically broken into 3 sections, so the police department has one section, Boys and Girls Club that will be leaving eventually when they move over to the former St. Gabriel School. And then the center part we share with the city for storage. And our section is filled to the brim,
Mm-hmm.
overloaded at this point. So there will be some additional space once Boys and Girls Club moves across the street, but it won't be nearly what we need.
Right. Have you asked for use of that space?
Yes. Yeah.
Came up.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, board members? Seeing none, thank you so much. Mr. Bradbury, we always appreciate your
Thank you.
Visit with us
Thank you
once
for
a
the
year.
opportunity.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
And Ms. Glennon, we've already talked, we're going to skip over the human resources report this evening.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving on to some policies, we'll hopefully start to get into some teaching and learning policies that have been on our list to do, but we have waited for change in legislation, upcoming updates from the State Department and Council. So we are gonna jump into 3 that we've been working on actually for a while and waiting for guidance. So I'm gonna turn things over to Dr. Fedigan to go over 3 policies with you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pataya. Good evening, members of the board. We do have, as Dr. Pataya mentioned, 3 policies for review tonight. The first is 6140, curriculum. That is a required policy. It is all in red. As you know, that indicates that it's an entirely new policy for the board to consider. This is a required policy, as I mentioned, and you can see that the opening statement at the front end of the policy has a typical statement that we would include, indicating the belief that the board has to provide all learners in our community with learning experiences that cover a wide variety of skills and understandings, attitudes, and knowledge needed for active participation in a democratic society. Enumerated in points 1 through 15 that follow are the given different areas of subject matter that are required to be included. I'd like to draw your attention to, and you might wonder about number 4 with health and safety. The reason why there is so much more information there is a lot more in that subject area that is required specifically within the statute. And similarly, there's a note at number 8 for science, and 12 Native American studies, and 13 Asian American Pacific Islander studies that indicates by statute the effective year, where we would need to have those subject matters included within the curriculum. And then the policy just closes with a statement of how curriculum is developed, revised, and reviewed, and eventually adopted. Policy then just has some legal references.
Questions from board members? Was this, just curious, this was a CADE policy?
Yes, and we did also, as Dr. Pataya mentioned, reference with legal counsel specifically with regard to the statutory requirements of subject matter.
Okay.
So there's very little that we would be at liberty to change within numbers 1 through 15.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Petrosky?
On the last paragraph of this policy, on the first page here, the district curriculum committee will give due consideration to the possible adoption. Is that related to what we were discussing in our last meeting?
Precisely right. And so we are, we want to indicate within the policy that we'll give due consideration, but we're also going to, obviously, as Dr. Pataya mentioned during the meeting you're referencing, we're going to stay within the statute, but we're also going to think about our own curriculum revision, policy and practice in district to do what we know is right for our students in Milford Public Schools. So it does relate to that, but curriculum moves beyond programming for us here in district.
Ms. Doyle?
Just for my own clarification, this is the K through 12 needs to cover all of these subjects. It's not obviously 1 year, way too much, or a time period of a K through 8 or a high school. This is K through 12.
Correct.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, this will come back next month for a second reading and potential adoption.
Okay, thank you. The next policy is policy 6141.51, student success plans, challenging curriculum and enrollment in advanced courses or programs of study. You may feel like you're experiencing a little bit of deja vu with this policy, and I see Mrs. Glennon nodding. The policy that's further along in your packet by the same number but a slightly different title, advanced courses or programs eligibility criteria for enrollment, we're recommending to rescind that policy. As Dr. Pataya mentioned, there's new legislation that is involving student success plans and also challenging curriculum. And when we reviewed the CABE policy on student success plans and challenging curriculum, there was so much redundancy with the original advanced course and study policy that we had just adopted in, I think, June.
Yes.
There was such redundancy, it would have been very confusing to have multiple policies that indicated and treated the same matter. So we worked with legal counsel to really synthesize the policies so that all in one, we're addressing the challenging curriculum policy, the requirement to support enrollment in advanced courses or programs of study, while also ensuring that our students have individual student success plans as they move through the school system. So if you look at those policies really side by side, you will see that we kept the board belief statement in the beginning, which is very important. That really sets the foundation for the policy as it follows. The definitions, we included one thing that we had in our Milford Public Schools policy that actually the CABE policy, and I don't even think legal counsel had considered, was the remote and online learning piece. I believe it's important to keep that, especially given how students are using technology as part of their programs of study. You'll notice that we did add the student success and academic plans on page 2. And that really talks about what's required for our students beginning in grade 6. And it's important to include that with regard to the challenging curriculum policy and access to advanced course program of study, because that would be outlined in the student success plan. So it makes sense to really synthesize these within one policy. We did also keep the evaluation piece at the end, which talks about how the superintendent will annually review student participation to ensure access and outcomes as students are taking these courses. And that really is that policy, which of course concludes with legal references.
I had a couple of housekeeping items. In the definitions, remote learning, if we could, just to keep it consistent with the others, perhaps say remote online learning is defined in state law as instruction by means of one or more internet software platforms. So remove remote online learning the second time in that first sentence. And then under student success and academic plans, if we just in the first sentence, just say the board recognizes. And I believe in the third paragraph that begins as a part of the student success plan, would be the 1, 2, 3, the fourth sentence, I think program should be singular. Such academic plan shall be designed to enroll such students in one or more advanced course or program, or should it be programs? You tell me, you tell me.
Oh, right here.
See the courses.
It should be, both should be plural or both should be singular?
Yeah, I would think so.
I would think so too. So
Is it confusing because it's saying it has one or more prior to advanced?
then courses or programs,
Yeah,
would you agree
maybe
that they
just-
should be the same?
Maybe we
either?
just say such student in courses or programs and take out one or more. So,
in advanced courses or programs.
yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Okay, I see none, so this one will also come back for a second reading and potential adoption at the December business meeting.
With a rescission.
With the
rescission,
rescission,
yeah.
correct, yeah.
And the third and final policy for this evening is policy 6172.1, gifted and talented identification and programming. This is a new policy, also a required policy, modeled after the K policy. We did, of course, review with legal counsel. There is, by state statute, a definition of gifted, so this is really around gifted and talented identification and programming, which requires us to have a plan for identifying students as gifted and talented. You'll notice that the fourth paragraph down talks about the identification of a student and how parents will be notified of such an identification, and that does need to be by electronic notification. So there's a lot of really required statutory language. Of course, we do notify parents most usually by electronic means and not mail anymore, but I did inquire about that. That whole final paragraph is all statutory language that must be included. And Mr. Brown and I worked on this policy together.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? Mr. Fowler?
Thank you. Just one housekeeping. I see in the first paragraph, I think it's the second sentence, it says by statute, a talented student is a student with both outstanding talent in the creative arts. There's a quotation marks. I don't know if there's supposed to be, if that's supposed to be there or not.
Quotation marks on the talented?
No. At the end
Oh,
of that.
right,
Yeah,
after the
yeah.
word arts.
There should be good catch on Mr. Fowler. There should be quotation marks before the word creative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from board members? Ms. Doyle?
Is there a specific reason why this policy is written differently than all the other policies? In the sense of every other policy is like, Milford Board of Education believes X. And then the district will do X, and then definitions say gifted, talented, and those are all still statutory language because we do the referencing within. So is it important to include that language of the Milford Board of Education supports a gifted and talented program as required by the state or something of that variety, or is that a specific choice to use the language that is used here?
I think the intent with this policy was to indicate what's required by law in identifying students who are gifted and talented.
So
So
the only
we
thing
kept
that's
the language
required
very
is the
simple.
identification.
Okay.
Yeah, so
How
we
is
just
it?
kept the language very simple and kept the
Okay.
statutory language.
I mean, all the other policies are also required language and statutory language, so I don't see the difference in why training.
Well, it would be the desire of the board. We felt like administration is recommending to the board that you consider a statutorily based policy. If the board has a desire in whole to add a complementary or introductory paragraph, you can. We're happy to draft something up for you, but we believe this satisfies what we need in order to then implement appropriate identification requirements.
I think in terms of the way the policy is written, it might simply have been that CABE, so many of our policies are written by CABE.
Mhm.
It just might have been the way they wrote this policy.
Right.
Maybe that it was written at a different time or by somebody different than the others.
I think sometimes when I look at policy, I look at it categorically where it falls in the series. And so 6,000 is all about teaching and learning. And I don't know, Ms. Doyle, I'd have to go back and take a look at all the 6,000 policies to verify that every single policy starts with Milford Board of Ed believes. So
I just don't ever remember seeing in any one we say by statute.
Yeah.
This is the definition, because that's where all these definitions are coming from. They're coming from statutes. For the most part, they are tied to statutory language.
Well, there's a peculiarity to this in that gifted and talented, by definition, lives in statutory language, but can be interpreted so many different ways. So for administration, it's really important that we use statutory language for this definition, because oftentimes we hear from parents, my kid's not being challenged, he's gifted. Well, now we're getting into the weeds of it, right?
Right.
When in our practice, research says that actually only 3 to 5% of the population is gifted. Most everybody else is high achieving and does really well in their hard work. So as administration, we need statutory language to help us implement the identification of gifted and talented students. So our recommendation to the board is to go with statutory language, stick to the definition, stick to the requirement for identification, and then let us handle the rest.
I'm not arguing that, I'm more arguing on the fact that this seems different than every other policy that has been brought before us.
Yes, maybe.
Mr. Pelchetti?
Just a quick question. By statute, you only have to identify, not service, correct?
Correct.
So by putting an introductory paragraph, does that imply that then the district will service?
Mhm.
That would be my question.
That was
So
my-
I'm struggling with introductory paragraph, because what do you say? Like,
Yeah.
we believe we should provide for gifted kids, and then, so I think the board already has made multiple introductory statements about meeting the needs of all students. And that's why categorically in the 6,000 series, I think the board already makes a statement in what they believe in meeting the needs of all kids. I think that you check the box in that in other places. So I do think that, I don't know what I would recommend to you, what, like, we believe in, and then there is a line in here about programming and budget, as well for programming for such students within budgetary and curricular constraints. So this can also be done in so many ways. It doesn't have to be a pull-out program. That's not the only way. So I would worry about an introductory statement, but it doesn't mean we can't come up with one if that's the desire of the whole board.
I was just curious.
I'm fine with the way it is personally.
I think part of it is, I don't know the context of what you just said right there, and that's very important for me to understand. And so otherwise it's in the sense of, we are not following our statutory duty, not knowing what Mr. Pichetti just said, about, we are required to identify, we are not required to do anything other than to meet the needs of the child appropriately from there. In the sense of providing extra beyond for gifted.
So I don't know if I would agree with everything you just said.
Right. That's fine.
That's lots of landmines in what was just said. So I would say that we believe, and I won't speak for the board, for administration, that we have a responsibility to meet the needs of all young people. Whether they are demonstrating a gift, a talent, or are experiencing some deficiencies in learning, or experience, or have a disability. So we're here for all kids, so whether there is going to be special programming that's pulled out or not, actually we can meet the needs of all children within some curricular programming pieces we already have in place. It doesn't have to be extra and above and beyond. So I think an introductory paragraph could get a little muddy for us, and now we'll have to wordsmith, so where does that take place and how does that happen?
That's
So
fine.
that already is muddy for us, so.
I don't wanna create a new obligation, and that's the most important
It
thing.
might be actually restrictive in our programming.
And we're trying to, just to give an example in the middle school case, right, so we're trying to provide voice and choice for all young people and allow young people to discover their talents and gifts at a preteen age, and not just lock it into 3 to 5% of identified kids. That at that age, we want them to consider what are their talents and what they would love to do. So I'd hate for one way in policy to meet the needs of young people to lock us into options moving forward.
That's fine.
But thanks for you're so astute to make that observation.
Just quickly going through clicking on some policies, they don't all, not every single one of them starts like that.
Where are all these policies?
In the 6,000s, just clicking on them, along the
But
way.
where in the 6,000s is that housed in the cloud universe?
Online.
On the website.
On the website, but they're all on the website.
So,
Any other questions? Okay, that's it for
Yes,
for
thank
you
you.
tonight, right? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment this evening? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned at 7:50.
Honestly, I think it might.
Yeah, next time.